Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Skyscraper, which people actually went to go see this weekend, because this film kind of just popped up. It looks like it's Die Hard and Towering Inferno, but with The Rock. They even ripped off the posters for those movies for this film. And this film doesn't have a whole lot of buzz going into this weekend, and it doesn't look like it's going to make a whole lot of money despite the fact that it has like the most popular actor in Hollywood, The Rock, in it. And I was not disappointed because I didn't have very high expectations going into this film. But one thing I would like to mention is that this was my first ever film in AMC's Dolby Cinema, and I thought it was pretty cool. I kind of wish I saw Infinity War in that. I would have been shaking from like the sound throughout the whole entire film. But I think it was at least worth checking out with this, and I didn't have to pay like a ton of money because I have AMC A-list. You should look into it. It's great. AMC give me money. So getting back to the actual film that I saw with Skyscraper, I think the biggest positive of this film is Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. And he'll always be The Rock to me. Dwayne. But I feel like he brings a lot of charisma to any film that he pops up in, and I feel like this film really didn't feel like a film written for The Rock. It felt like it was for somebody not as incredibly physically intimidating, but I feel like The Rock went into this performance and it was different. He didn't just throw one-liners all over the place. He had a couple, but I'll talk about that more in a bit. But he was a lot more serious and a lot more vulnerable in this film, and I actually enjoyed seeing The Rock do that, and I think he did a good job. And despite not having as much to do as she could have, I think Neve Campbell does a really good job in her role in this film as his wife, and the two of them are really the anchors of this film. And Roland Mjolnir, who plays our main villain, does a decent enough job making himself at least a little bit memorable, because it's like, unlike Die Hard, this doesn't have Hans Gruber, who's like one of the most memorable action movie villains ever, but at least he did a nice enough job to actually be a little bit memorable. And Robert Elswit, who I was surprised to find out was the cinematographer for this, as he's a lot more of a prestige kind of cinematographer who works with big directors, came in for this film, and I think that really elevated this film because the cinematography in this is pretty incredible. And there's parts in this movie where it's like you're looking straight down, and it scared the shit out of me, honestly. And I jumped a little bit in my seat when The Rock's about to climb something. He slips a little bit, and it looks like he's going to plummet. And it was really well shot, honestly, and I was a bit surprised about that. And I feel like a lot of this stuff is very effective. It's not great. Like, the score works well for this film, and the effects work well. It doesn't look super fake fire, but it doesn't look super realistic, but it works. It works for the film, and I have to say one of the coolest parts of this film honestly has nothing to do with the heights, but the final set piece of this film, they do something very interesting for an action movie, and I'm like, huh, I was a little surprised by that, and that's probably going to be the most memorable thing about this film for me. And when it does deal with you being up really high on this building and dealing with scenes like that, I think that's really suspenseful and actually really works. And I credit this film for doing that. I feel like most of the supporting cast, though, is really, it's like, act like a stereotypical, you're twirling your mustache because you know you're not a villain right now, but we totally know that you're going to be one at some point. And some of the acting was really stilted and just didn't really work for a lot of the supporting cast. And some of the editing was really bad in this film, especially during the hand-to-hand fight scenes. It's like, I'm not going to go on a whole rant like I have in other videos, but if you can't tell what's actually going on in the fight scene, you're not shooting an effective fight scene. And there's also, at least in the beginning third of this film, there's some awkward editing between like shots of people where it makes the dialogue feel really choppy. And the dialogue in this film is really not memorable and felt like I just need somebody to write words. It wasn't interesting. Like, The Rock really doesn't have a whole lot of like great one-liners. There's a couple. One about duct tape, and if it wasn't The Rock, it probably wouldn't have worked. But the dialogue's not very good in this film, and like I mentioned, a lot of the first act feels really awkward. with the setup and how they're doing things throughout the film. And it has a very convoluted story. It's like, where the hell's this going, honestly, and what's the point of this? It's like they tried to cram, it's like there's a towering inferno kind of thing. It's like The Rock trying to save his family, but then there's this whole entire heist and this conspiracy and all this stuff, and it's just like, kind of pick where you're going with this. And there's some really serious plot holes. I'm honestly not the kind of person that sits in a movie and being like, while in the theater, it's like, that makes no sense. I'm more the person, like, I'll watch it, and then when I think about it later, it's like, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. I was literally sitting in the movie being like, that makes no sense, and pointing it out while I'm sitting and watching it. So, they were pretty bad. And, like, the hand-to-hand action, like, well, actually, the action in this movie doesn't work very well. Because, like, I wouldn't consider, like, the moments of jumping from thing to thing or dealing with the actual building as action. It's more of, like, suspenseful set pieces. But the actual action in this is pretty forgettable, except for that final set piece, which was more about the set piece and not the actual, like, fighting going on. But Skyscraper's fine. I don't feel like I wasted my time. It was kind of brain off, just enjoy it for a little bit. And honestly, if you like going to the movies and just having a quick good time, because this is only like an hour and 40 minutes, then go out and see it. If you're somebody that expects higher of your films, this is not the film for you, because it's pretty dumb. But if you love The Rock, he's in it for like almost the whole entire movie, every scene, so you're going to enjoy seeing The Rock and his mountain of a man structure. And actually, I forgot to mention one thing, which is funny because it's like, he has an amputated leg and has a prosthetic leg in this film, and I thought they did a decent enough job of incorporating that and making it interesting and doing interesting things with it. There are some moments where I'm like, I think they're completely forgetting that he doesn't have like two fully functional real legs and stuff like that, but for the most part it made for interesting suspense and stuff like that. But if you enjoy just going out and having some fun, go check out Skyscraper.